There is something I'd like to ask you before we begin today. Have you ever been completely fine, like genuinely fine, and then one small thing happens? It could be a tone, a look, or a text message that comes in, and within minutes your mind is somewhere else entirely. Flooded, spinning, and convinced something is very wrong. Or have you ever sat in a conversation that started to feel too heavy and something in you just went quiet? Not because you chose to, but because your body made that decision before your mind even caught up. You'd smile, you'd nod, you'd say you're fine, but mentally you're just not there. Or have you ever done anything, and I mean anything at all, to distract yourself enough to make sure that nothing underneath could surface? Now, I lived all three of those scenarios throughout my whole life, and for years I thought something was wrong with me. And today I want to tell you that there isn't and that there never was. Welcome back to the Wonders Within podcast. I'm Nikki Denham, founder of Wellness Wonders Australia, and today we are talking about your nervous system. And I promise that by the end of this episode, you will understand yourself in a way that you didn't before. Now, there were years where my evenings all looked exactly the same, identical. The moment I walked through the door from work, I would reach for wine. And not just a glass to breathe, but a bottle to disappear. And my phone firmly in my hand so that there wasn't a single quiet moment left to think anything. I'd scroll, I'd pour, and I'd do it for so long that when I finally looked up from my phone, the room was dark and time had just passed by so quickly. But back then, I didn't know that I was numbing. I thought I was unwinding. I thought that's just what you did after a long day at work. But I wasn't unwinding. I was making sure I never had to feel what was underneath. Because somewhere deep down, I knew that if I sat in that quiet long enough, something would surface. And at that time, I just wasn't ready for that. And then there were the moments, the ones that blindsided me. I could be completely fine and then something small would happen, like a tone in someone's voice, just a slight edge of difference. Nothing most people would even clock, but I'd catch it. And suddenly I'd be replaying the whole conversation in my mind, trying to figure out what I'd done, what it meant, and whether I was about to lose something or someone. Or it could be a plan that changed last minute, and I'd feel this wave of something that just didn't make sense. Not just frustration, it felt like something older than that. Something that felt like being left, like being forgotten, like I didn't matter enough for someone to keep their word. Or I'd receive a text message that felt off, a response that was too short, or a friend who didn't reply the way that they usually would. And within minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. Now, don't even get me started on what a thumbs up emoji would do to me in those moments. My chest tight, my mind running, and jumping to the worst version of everything. It made no sense from the outside, but to me, it felt completely real. Because it wasn't about the tone, the message, or the changed plan. It was about everything those things reminded my body of. Old moments, old feelings, and old proof that the world just wasn't safe. And then there were the drives home. Now, I'm sure we can all relate to this one where I'd just get in my car and then I'd just be arrived at my destination. And I genuinely couldn't tell you how I got there. My body had driven me home while I was somewhere completely different. I'd been in a meeting I was still replaying, or a conversation I was already dreading having, or just gone, floating somewhere between the day I just had and the version of myself that was trying to hold it all together. Now, my body knew the route home, so my mind just left. And that is disassociation. And I didn't even have a word for it back then. I just thought I had a bad memory and I just thought that I was tired. Now, for a long time, I thought about those three things and thought they were completely separate problems. The numbing, the spiraling, and the checking out. But they weren't. They were all the same thing. They were my nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, and that is protect me. Now, I want to introduce you to something called the Polyvagal Theory. Now, it was developed by a neuroscientist named Dr Stephen Porges, and what he discovered changed the way we understand the human nervous system entirely. Now, before his work, we understood the nervous system as having two states, on or off, fight and flight or rest and digest. So what Porges discovered is that it's actually more layered than that, and understanding those layers is what makes everything make sense. Let's break it down simply. So your nervous system has three states. The first one we call the safe and social state. This is when you feel genuinely okay, present, connected, and able to think clearly, to laugh, to listen, and to be in your body. This is where life actually happens and where real connection is possible. The second state is fight or flight. And that is your threat response. When your nervous system detects danger, real or perceived, it floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart races, your thoughts speed up, and you become hypervigilant and ready to act. This is the spiral, the flooding, and the one small thing that unravels everything else. And then the third state is shutdown, or what Polyvagal Theory calls the dorsal vagal state. And this is the oldest response in our biology. So when the threat feels too big, when fight or flight isn't an option, the nervous system does something very different. It goes quiet, it disconnects, you go numb and you check out. You smile and say you're fine, while something inside you has simply left the building. Now, this is the drive home that you don't remember. This is the bottle of wine every night. This is the hours of scrolling and somehow swallowing your whole evening. Your nervous system wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing its job. The problem is it learned that job in a very different time, in circumstances where those responses were genuinely necessary, and now it runs the same responses in your adult life and in your relationships, in moments that aren't actually dangerous but feel that way because of what came before. That's what trauma does. It doesn't live in the memory, it lives in the body. It lives in the nervous system, in these automatic responses that fire before your thinking brain has even registered what's happening. And here is what I want you to really hear. You are not overreacting, you are not too sensitive, and you are not broken. You are a human being whose nervous system learned to survive, and it did its job beautifully. It just needs help learning that you're safe now. And I want to give you something practical here, because knowing the name of what's happening, that's powerful, but it doesn't automatically pull you out of it. So if you recognize shutdown in yourself, if you go quiet, numb, or go through the motions while something inside you has already left, here's what I want you to try in that moment. Just bring yourself back to the room. Yes, it's that simple. Bring yourself back. Don't try to think your way out. Don't try to process it. Just slowly look around the space that you're in and notice 5 things that you can actually see. Not in your head, but with your eyes, like you're seeing the room for the first time. A corner, a color, something on a shelf, even the light coming through a window. And as you do, feel your feet, press them into the floor, and notice the weight of your body in whatever you're sitting on. This is not woo-woo. This is neuroscience. Because what you're doing is sending a signal to your nervous system that your body is here, that the threat, real or not, is not in this room. And sometimes that is enough, not to fix it, but to come back to your breath, back to your body, and back to the present moment. That is the first step out of the shutdown. Not insight, not processing, just I'm here, I'm in my body, and I'm okay right now. Now, here is what I want you to sit with this week. So go grab your journal and find a quiet moment and ask yourself, which of the 3 states do I recognize most in myself? When do I spiral? When do I shut down? And when do I numb? And then ask, what is the moment just before it happens? What is the trigger I keep missing? Now write it out without judgment and with curiosity. And I want to say something about that word curiosity, because I don't think it means what we think it does. Curiosity isn't soft. It isn't passive. It's actually one of the bravest things you can do with yourself. For me, being curious meant I stopped asking what is wrong with me and started asking what is this trying to tell me. It meant I'd notice the wine in my hand, and instead of feeling shame about it, I'd get quiet and ask, what am I not wanting to feel right now? What happened today that I have not processed yet? Sometimes I'd sit with a question and nothing would come, and that's okay. I just notice the urge, feel the silence, notice how uncomfortable the quiet felt, and I would sit in it, that uncomfortable quiet, for as long as I can. And I'd let that be enough for that day. Other times, something would surface, a conversation that had stung more than I let on, a moment where I'd felt invisible, or a version of myself that was just tired of performing. And I started writing down those things, nothing neatly and never in full sentences, just whatever came up, a word, a feeling, a memory. Even some things that I hadn't even thought about in years would come up. Now that's what curiosity looked like for me, messy, imperfect, but honest. Because the moment you can name the pattern, you are no longer inside it, you are watching it, and that is where the choice begins. Now, when I sat with myself, here is what I found. My most familiar state was shut down. The numbing, the filling, of every single quiet moment. And the trigger I kept missing was the stillness itself. The moment things got quiet, my nervous system read it as danger, because for most of my life, quiet meant something was about to happen, something that I needed to brace for. So I felt it every time without even realizing I was doing it. Seeing that changed everything because I stopped judging myself for it and I just started getting curious instead. That curiosity, that one small shift, is where the healing began. Now, if this episode landed for you, if you recognized yourself in any of those three states, I want you to know that the work inside the Wonder Circle is built around exactly this. Understanding your nervous system, learning to resource it, practices that help you move from shutdown or spiral back into safety gently, consistently over time. Breath work, somatic movement, and body scanning. Practices that speak the language your nervous system actually understands. Because this work doesn't happen in your head, it happens in your body. And you don't have to figure it out alone. The link for the Wonder Circle is in the show notes below, and I would love to hold that space for you. Now, thank you for being here for this one. I know the nervous system stuff can sound clinical when you hear it first, but I hope today it felt less like a science lesson and more like coming home to yourself. Because you are not too much, you are not overreacting, and you are not broken. You are just a woman whose body learned to survive. And learning to feel safe, really safe in your own body, that is something that you can do now. That is some of the most foundational work that you will ever do for yourself. Until next time, bye for now.